Okay, the dog likes you. He doesn't like everybody. You
Yep.
put 7 stitches right there. Just don't get in his face.
Okay.
Gail's like, honey, you can't tell him that. I'm like, I can tell him anything I want. She goes, no, you can't. She goes, who's the HR person up there? And I'm like, looking at him, honey. She goes, God help us.
Can you say that my name is Donica and I'm the owner of Donica Livestock here in Ardmore, Oklahoma.
What do I need to say that? She just did. My name is Kent Donica. Own and operate Donica Livestock. Pretty diversified, mostly cattle, but sometimes sheep and goat operation in southern Oklahoma. Been here since '87 and probably be here when I'm not here anymore.
What does regenerative agriculture, when you hear that word, what does that mean to you?
Change, which I think is why it scares a lot of people. You weren't doing it as quite as good as you thought you were yesterday.
What made you decide to do the regenerative agriculture to begin with?
Started asking lots of questions that people couldn't answer, and they were legitimate questions. And mainly just tinkering, you know. Okay, what if I didn't? What if I didn't fertilize? I don't have anything against fertilizer. I don't use it because I think I can be more profitable without it. Big push for me is the difference between gross production and the most profit. There was probably things I was spending money on that weren't making me a lot of money. I mean, they were maybe returning themselves. If you spend a fertilizer and it costs you 10 grand, is it making you 10? Is it making you 12? Or is it making you 9? And then a lot of it was kind of I guess maybe the belligerence. Oh no, that won't work. This has been proven. Anyway, I started tinkering with it, and then kind of from about '08 on, things started going up, and they started going up, and it was pretty good, and the cattle market was pretty good, and then the drought hit in 11, and then it wasn't very good, and nothing went back down. And I kind of started asking questions, what if we couldn't get this stuff? Place we're on now, I didn't let a weed make seed for 20 years, and I couldn't spray. It was just a swamp, and I had the worst weeds I'd ever had. And I realized if I've been diligent, killing them, trying to kill the seed bank, the first year I take my foot off Mother Nature's neck, she climbed up and kicked my butt, and I don't like losing. And so I'm like, well, okay, so what do I do now? If you can't kill it, maybe you need to manage it. And I just started looking for answers, and then a lot of people said, oh no, there's no way that's gonna work. And then they made me mad and told me I couldn't do it, so then it became a moral imperative to try it.
There you go.
My biggest piece of advice would be to attack slowly, change slowly, or make sure you don't change faster than you can afford. You got to pay the speeding ticket. Don't get a heavy foot. There's 2 ways to bend a piece of pipe. Number one, you can take a hammer and beat it. You're probably going to bend it someplace you don't like. You're going to ding it up, and you could hit your finger. Option 2 is a vise. You crush it slow. Nobody mashes their finger in a vise. Or if you do, that's on you. And I've seen people go cold turkey. I went pretty cold turkey, and I thought I could afford it, and I could, but if I had it to do over again, I would have attacked slower. I thought I could do it better and faster than Mother Nature told me I could do it. Did I do it? Yes. And thinking it would be easier, that attacking slowly, I learned that personally first. Let's just slow down. Nobody's dead yet. Let's just give it a minute. And probably impatience. I mean, if you've been doing stuff that's not real good for the earth to your place for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, for 20 years, if I hooked up to a fertilizer spreader, my minimum was 100 pounds of N. If I didn't put out 100 pounds of N, just wait till you can. Go big or go home. First year I didn't do that, I had a lot of forages that wanted it really bad. But the first thing I found out, even with that steep learning curve, I turned a set of yearlings out and I stocked light, and I was pretty nervous, and they gained pretty close, probably to my 10-year average. They didn't look as good, and I'd stocked light, but the first thing I figured out is they made a lot more money. I was in this pasture a month ago, and it's not changed, and if it doesn't rain, I'm gonna be out of grass in about 3.5, 4 weeks. A big difference between that and coming down here one day and thinking, oh my God, I'm out of grass. And to use the sale barn phrase, I'm a pretty big fan of smoking what you roll. And I'd go down there and they would say, okay, how many yearlings you got? Well, I got 500 yearlings. Okay, that's a lot of land. I'm like, well, I sold 6 loads a month ago. And they would say, Kent, if you had only kept them for one more month, you would have got $30 a head. And I'm like, yeah, and the markets went down 60 a head in that month.
Exactly. Yep.
Or like, you know, they have a cost share with hay. I ran out of hay in '96 and swore I'd never run out again, and I haven't. And they're like, oh, when did you buy that? Well, I bought it in June. Oh my God, if you had just waited. I'm like, yeah. And if I hadn't.
I got it. Okay.
I haven't seen these cows in a couple of days, and they're probably in that lane.
Got you a jersey.
I got 6 of them butcher steers. These things will be worth Christmas. They'll be worth $4 a pound hanging weight. It's like a lottery ticket if you can stand for your neighbors to laugh at you. And I don't care what my neighbors think.
Friendly suckers.
They're all front end black when you jerk that hide off. If they eat good.
So talk a little bit about the genetics that you're running here. Obviously with the stockers, you just, like you mentioned earlier, but I see some older cows in here. Are you breeding any of those?
Or I bought those cows because they were cheap.
Okay. So are you just letting them, are you buying them pregnant, letting them calve out, and then? That was
the plan. The plan was to buy the cows, fatten them up, calve them out. Some of them were pairs. Some of these smaller calves are their second calf, and this market started up, and I realized that maybe that's where the money was right now, was with the cows.
Okay.
And to some degree, the different segments are a little bit antagonistic or parasitic to each other. I mean, if you're in the cattle business and I'm in the yearling business, and you have a really good year, I'm probably not, because I paid too much for your calves. And if you have a bad year, I'm gonna have a good one because I stole your calves. And I saw that too. You know, a lot of people feed, and I've seen them take a $200 profit in an 800-pound steer and feed it down to 25 or 30 because their program was to feed cattle.
Right.
And I understand you got to be there when that deal goes up, but yeah, I don't. Here we go, ruffling feathers again. By and large, most people pay far too much attention to genetics.
Okay. In what way?
Take a bull, performance, you'll pay $78,000 for a good bull. All right. Einstein figured out you can't create matter. If those calves had a genetic predisposition to weigh 40 pounds heavier, that weaning.
I wish I had my phone.
And you don't provide them the nutrients to do it, they're not going to weigh 40 pounds more.
That's true. So here, this is a question, a little bit. I got a question. So you got genetics, nutrition, and health. Out of the three, or how would you rank that in terms of importance? From most important to well, they're all important, but if you had to rank those, health, genetics,
I don't know how those would go,
nutrition.
but I would probably, number one would probably be profit.
Okay.
I have in the past, I have bought cattle and I penciled in a 20% death loss.
20.
And sometimes I got it and sometimes I didn't.
Huh.
But I penciled it in and they would work. They would work at it, maybe work at a 20, and were they plain cattle? Yeah. Quarter brimmers, 2-3 colors, some of them probably an 8th longhorn. 8th of them probably God knows what crawled out of the swamps. But they made money.
Mm-hmm. You don't need flashy.
A good cow. And I was at a conference in Mississippi a couple years ago. A guy goes, what's your definition of a good cow? And I said, she shows me a calf inside of 365 days. And she does it without very much help from me. If I got to go check her and feed her, I'm going to go buy a yearling. That's it.
Do you think we're babying our cattle too much?
I think the Dodgers going to win the World Series. Yeah, we are. And I mean, I'd be about these cows. It's kind of like I worked for a guy in college, had a junkyard, and he had these bumper stickers that said, all cars run on used parts. People are like, why do you buy those cows from the sale barn? I'm like, what's wrong with them?
Yeah.
Well, what is so special? And I enraged a guy in Biloxi. I told him I was on a panel, and I said, look, the sad truth is, everybody in this room could replace your cows a lot easier than your ego would let you think. They're just cows. How much money are you putting in them? And what are you getting back out? It's kind of like the Milky PD, I think is the pinnacle of that gullible believability in academics and research. My buddy Dave Lawman at Oklahoma State, and Dave's a gunfighter in a world full of punks with pistols. I listen when he talks. You're talking about that Milky PD, and his contention was it's a growth trait. Bigger cows give more milk. If you took one of the better Holstein cows in the DHIA, which is a huge database of milk cows, and turned her out on your place, how much milk would she give? And the answer is probably about the same amount as your stock cows because of nutrition. And this was a long time. I got out of college, I was pretty sure I knew it all, and I still think I do sometimes, but I just don't announce it quite as loudly as I did in '86 when I got out. But that, I mean, to your question, Emma, and that's maybe the big problem, is you asked which one is most important, and I don't think you can separate them. I think when we start making a ranked list, that's where you screwed up. They're all important. And so I guess maybe my question would be, which one is limiting you? Number one, which one's limiting you the most? Or number two, which one are you spending the most money on that you're not getting back? Because I could make those calves a lot bigger. I could make those cows a lot fatter. Some of those cows don't have all their teeth. And I will probably at some point wean that calf, and I will keep the 8 or 10 good ones, and I don't know what I bought. I was at the sale when I bought these cows, and that's again, I mean, you can attack too fast, but you got to know what you're looking at. I stopped in to visit. Guy had showed up with 2 pot loads of this, it was abusive skinny cows and calves, and that's what's left of about 70 head. And I sat down, did some figuring, and thought, okay, I can give $1,600 for some of these older bred cows. And I bought the first 40 pairs that came through the ring for $1,900. Somebody goes, hey, Donica, you gonna give us a chance to get some of them? I'm like, it's a public auction. I thought I just did. Get your hand in the air. You just wave your card. And I knew everybody there. Gail, and I said, well, I thought you stopped in to visit. And I was like, I did. But it turned in, it wasn't a visit. It wasn't a visit when they unloaded those skinny pairs. And I sold most of them. And again, I mean, people look back, they tend to think, man, if I'd done this, if I'd done that, give it a rest, man. If you're not psychic, yeah, 2 years ago, if I'd known the calf market was gonna do this, but I didn't lose money on any of those cows I sold. They work good enough. And sometimes I think at least, and I don't view a cow any different than a yearling. I'm gonna buy her, keep her a while. I've got a neighbor up the road, he told me one time, he goes, why don't you quit fooling them yearlings and just run some cows? And I told him, I said, Mr. Johnson, if you gave me a cow, I would sell her and go buy 2 yearlings. You can only buy about one and a quarter now. Anyway, I had these cows up by the road, and Mr. Johnson stops. Thought you didn't like cows, and I said, I don't. I only give you a payday once a year. I eat a lot, and he goes, what's up with them cows? And I said, because I like money. One of my rules is if you can't eat it, stomp it. Put it in a cow or put it on the ground. So when you leave, everything's kind of got an even playing field. We've had far too good a summer, and I don't have near enough stock to do a good job of that, but I'll probably come check them Monday. I may leave them another day, but they'll probably certainly come out of here Tuesday.
I want to talk a little bit about what forage and native grasses that you've got that you're looking for, that you like, indicators of good soil health from the forage.
Biggest thing for me, and I think and in the regenerative deal, we get far too hung up on carbon. And make no mistake, carbon's important, but carbon's important because of the water. A 1% increase in organic matter, you can hold just shy of an inch of water. And when I heard that, and it's like, okay, these guys aren't blowing smoke, you know. First thing I thought is, so makes me a lot more drought proof, which I like, particularly where I am. You know, if you're in Cimarron, New Mexico, you're gonna be in a drought. They tell you they're in a drought, they're lying. They're always in a drought. 12 inches of rain is a D4 drought, but you manage it. First thing I thought is, okay, if I can grow yearlings and think, man, it ain't raining, I got 30 days left, and I wanna wait 60 days to sell these calves, start feeding them. Rains, you quit feeding them. I could kind of see in the future a lot more. But it was mainly the water, and I've been a big proponent of keeping the ground covered for 30 years. I grazed a place in the ground and saw what it did. And with regards to the species that hill these cows came from was coastal Bermuda, monoculture, when I bought this place in '98. And that was one of the first things that Charles Griffith nearly beat in my head was you got to have diversity. Mono anything is not good.
Explain that.
I was raised, and both of y'all were, if you're going to grow Bermuda grass, you kill everything else. Monoculture. You don't want no Johnson. God help you get crabgrass in that Johnson grass and in that Bermuda grass. And early on, I'm like, what's the problem with it? And for a number of years, it was like, okay, if a cow eat it, leave it there. If they won't, kill it. And I've kind of since changed that. Anything in here that's not grass makes me nervous. This is kind of where I started, because if I'd come in here and sprayed 2,4-D, I've got a really good pecan crop. Probably my share be worth 10, 11,000 if they make. Or you come in here in June, they're just setting, spray it volatilizes, and all of a sudden you got no pecan crop. So I brush hogged it for a number of years, and then I was like, okay, what if this is kind of where I started trying to manage it. But I think you'll know you've come as close to arriving as you're going to when you see warm season perennials, native grasses. And I openly ridiculed a lot of people. You're telling me I can get native grass in a stand of Bermuda grass that's been managed as a monoculture for 30 years. And it took me 4 years of having way more faith than I had some days, but I'm starting to see big blue stem up on that hill. and here and there a little bit of gamma grass.
So when you switched into...
Excuse me a minute, are you either one of y'all allergic to poison ivy?
I probably am, but I've got boots
Okay.
and breeches on.
Continue.
I've noticed a few of them. So when you started moving into the regenerative agriculture methods, it was probably going against what we all have been taught for gosh knows how long. Was there a panic moment where you're like trying to retrain your brain to say, hey, the weeds are okay, or oh gosh, is it supposed to look like this? Am I doing something wrong? Because
Sure
you're switching.
Yeah, and it was not comfortable. I knew what was gonna happen whenever I put my sprayer up. Part of me would still like to come graze this and then come brush hog it.
Do you do any brush hogging or mowing at all?
Not a lot,
Okay.
some. And I tell people, look, if you can't stand to look at it, graze it and then brush hog it, but don't kill them. There's not a lot of difference between a brush hog and a grazing event. You're taking half of the plant. And it puts everything puts that grass even with that weed.
Mm-hmm.
If you come in here and eat that, particularly if you eat it too far and that's still tall, well, when you leave, that's gonna do better than your grass.
Well, and I noticed when we drove in, your weeds, they were pretty much half the plant up had been stripped because the cows were eating that, and then the grass
Yep.
below was fairly untouched.
And a lot of that up there, I graze that pretty light with my cows, and I've got a buddy that's got some goats here. And I think maybe the big deal a lot of people in regen ag missing is multi-species. I mean, if you can't eat it, if you eat it, you're trying to turn it to money. If you can't eat it, stomp it, and if you can't eat it and stomp it, go get something that will eat it. That's why I've got those goats here. We get finished getting this fence, and when those goats leave, that hickory sprout right there will be a stob. Most of those smaller blackberries. And in the 90s, I cleared a place with goats, and I realized after I'd killed the brush that the goats would make more money than the cattle, but I didn't have any brush for the goats to eat. Why aren't you gonna kill those sprouts? And I said, because quite frankly, those sprouts will make more money with a $4 a pound goat than killing them and growing more grass would with a $2,000 yearling. He goes, boy, he goes, I got to retrain my brain. And I said, that's the first thing you got to do, and it's the last thing you got to keep doing.
So talk about that with the goats. How do you manage when to bring the goats in versus when they need to start moving out? Do you let that whatever pasture section rest before you bring cattle in? Talk about how you're managing.
I think, there's a lot of people, they got a plan. And I think you need a plan, but two things that'll shipwreck you doing it this way or any way is not sticking with your plan. And the second one is sticking with it too long. I'm gonna let this place tell me when it's ready to be grazed. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna come back here in 30 days and graze it again. Maybe it needs 45. Maybe it needs 90. And that gets back to the other big mistake that a lot of people make, and this gets back to what we were talking about propping your cows up. Most people are overstocked. That's the nicest way you can say it. If you got a set of cows, a good rule of thumb is you feed a bale of hay to a cow a month. If you got 100 cows and you're feeding 500 bales of hay, you are supplementing your cows 5 months out of the year. And that's far more common than you would think. And that's the nice thing I like about a yearling. I can feed a yearling a bale of hay and I know I'm gonna get it back in 90 days, 4 or 5 months. And sometimes in a drought, and I understand people have, if you're a seed stock producer, if you don't wanna sell your genetics. That's one reason I never got hooked on genetics. Yeah, I mean, now I may say, okay, I'm thinking with the summer we're having, this should be ready again in 60 days. What I'm trying to do here is let the cows come through here and get the best of it, Goats don't eat a lot of grass. They're not very competitive, properly grazed with a cow. And then we get this, if I had this fence, I graze these, I may move the goats in here.
Well, and that brings you to talking about just profitability, and to keep a ranch running, you've got a diverse income now. You got 2 different
income streams.
And like we're seeing right now, the cattle market's really high, so it's really great when you have them to sell them out when the market's high. And when you were talking about earlier, goats being low is when you bought them. You were explaining earlier there was a section of time that you didn't have enough brush for them to eat out, but goats were really low, and you know that market was going to come back up. I always thought I had to get farming experience, but you're over here changing my mind on that, which I guess appeases to my laziness because I don't have to.
And if you like farming, but I mean, they've done the same thing in the Mississippi Delta. 3 years ago, I was screaming down 20, and I'm seeing all of these brand new shiny pivots. I get to Ruston, somewhere eastern Louisiana. I just pulled off Zimmer, one of the big names in pivots. At a yard, there was 7 flatbeds, had a pivot loaded on them. Pulled in the yard and told that guy, I'm like, it's none of my business, but when in the name of God, you putting up pivots where you get 65 inches of rain? And he said, well, I don't know, Stretch, but I'm putting them up because they pay me to, which I thought was a very good reason. We get to check, and they have collapsed their soil just like they did in the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma. It won't absorb water. They takes 38, 40 inches of rain to get a really good corn crop. They get 60, and they're having to put another 12 to 18 on it. And they're designing the pivots where when the water runs off the field, it goes into collection ponds so they can pump it and put it on again. It won't go in. It runs off, and they just keep it saturated.
So here's a question. You know, we talk about how we can improve the environment, and especially when it...
Hey, Joe, move those. Excuse me.
No, you're fine.
I gotta check a gate.
See creatures moving?
Yeah, I can't tell where the fence is. I don't know if they're supposed to. Anyway, go on with the question. Sorry.
No, you're fine. We talk about environment and trying to basically repair a lot of the damages that has been done over generations. Do you think that repaired progress can happen with just one producer on their property alone, or do you feel that this needs to be a joint effort for it to actually make an impact? Now, obviously, you would like everybody on board, but let's just call a spade a spade. When have we ever all been on board about anything?
Good point. I don't think, to answer your question, yes, and I decided early on when I started consulting, doing this, I mean, I'm not gonna, I'll preach if you want to listen. I didn't have enough cattle to eat on my ryegrass, and the goal now is maybe the goats eat enough, leave most of the grass alone. Those nannies are really suspicious.
But they're not, you didn't seed anything, right? You're just letting this grow? Okay.
And I was early on a little skeptical of the native seed bank, but some years I'll have vetch in here like you can't believe. And I planted this to Marshall ryegrass in '98.
Okay. So that rye is just whatever's left over?
10 years ago, I'm not even sure what that is. I don't spend a lot of time on species identification. We go back down where those cows are. I mean, just here and there, I'm starting to see some blue stem. And that gave me hope. For a couple of years, I'd come down here and think, man, if I'm supposed to be telling people how to do this, I hope the hell they don't see my place. It's a lot, and I tell people it's hard. You know, a lot of people say, oh no, you just go out there and do it. And you take cover crops. Everybody thinks you go sling out a 11-way seed mix and it's gonna get 6 foot tall and you're gonna start looking like Gabe Brown. And that's just setting yourself up for failure. I tell people, look at the bar ditch. If you got vetch in the bar ditch, plant vetch. Don't plant some sort of exotic Southeast Asian clover that costs $25 an acre because it's probably not gonna grow.
Do you have much issue with parasites with your cattle or with the goats, or they pretty self-sufficient at this point?
In the 90s when I ran goats, if you make a goat, if you don't make them drop their head below the point of their shoulder, you don't have to worm them. I had a set of goats, and this was whenever, you got to worm them every 30 days. Most parasites can climb 4 to 6 inches up that grass. So the worm can get to right there. And he's got to sit and wait to get ate. If you don't make that goat eat closer than here, I've got an 8-inch barrier. They only get wormy if they got to eat close to the ground. Cattle or goats.
I was going back to, like I was saying, when we first got here, everything was stripped from the top, and about halfway through that plant, I mean, shoot, even this right here, they didn't, it's like they took a bite and then moseyed on, or maybe 2, and then moseyed on to the next patch. They weren't sitting there scarfing it down because they was hungry.
And that's what, if I could wiggle my nose and make something.
Kind of right there.
Yep. I mean, see, did they eat a lot of it? No. And there's a lot of those plants, they've got medicinal properties of sorts. I think animals are smarter than we give them credit for. They know what to eat. You know, tannins, oak leaves, elm leaves, they're a natural dewormer. And these goats were a little thin. Joe had been grazing them a little short. We turned them out here. They defoliated every oak sprout out there. It's the first thing they ate. And it's not usually the first thing they like.
That's it for this episode of Ranchworthy. A big thanks to Kent Donica for the laughs, the lessons, and the honest look of his evolving approach to ranching. I'm your host, Emma Kaufman, and we'll see you next time on Ranchworthy.